the abdomen. There are times when you won't be able to feel the rise and fall of the abdomen. And if that persists for any length of time, then try to take your attention to the tip of the nose. Try to feel the breath going in and out of your nostrils. Your visual attention is still 3 feet in front of you, but your mental attention is there. Right? Clear? Okay. But overall, it's the rise and fall of the belly, because this is a body process, and all of the conditioning, as we said yesterday, is locked in the body. So that's where the liberation occurs. When the Buddha awakened, the first thing he did was touch the ground. He's saying the body is in alignment, the body is in connection with, the body is in harmony with, the body is in unity with the cosmos.
Right, the earth and then by extension the cosmos. Huh.
So,
yeah, so that it speaks to, we were talking yesterday about somatic experience of not just being in our heads, right, and thinking about things, but actually allowing ourselves to experience it also in the body. And both is best. I just want to say greetings to everyone.
Greetings to everybody this morning. Hello, in case you're tacking in a titch on time. We were a bit early, so we're off and running.
Hi,
so,
everyone.
Greetings. I'll look at the camera here because this is where you are, but I see you over here. Catherine and I see you in this corner. So I don't know, can we put the TV set back behind this corner so we're not having to turn sideways tomorrow? Or?
It will be harder for you to see it. If that's
Well,
okay.
that's okay. There's, you know, these are really big people on the screen. Look how big they are.
I think it's partly because once we put the slides up, if they're in the back of the room.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's also
Anyway, we're figuring this out.
Is it?
We'll see what we can
See what you can do. So
We need like a really big screen, maybe like 2 up here, and
I'm feeling a little.
we can have the slides
schizophrenic.
on one and
Anyway, we'll talk.
everybody on the
We'll
other.
talk to the camera as much as possible. All right. So
So-
here's an interesting sidebar. Yes,
oh, I was going to tactile processes. May I go to
that's what I was going to do.
tactile processes?
You go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So we talked about feeling in the tactile processes of motion, mostly. Oh, that's so funny. My body's really cooperating and my stomach is growling. So we're talking about the rise and fall of the abdomen and also the bodily processes based on the 3 primary elements of earth, fire, and air. So
Curious
when
to-
our digestion is working, that's the fire in our belly, right? So the air is, it might be, well, it's partly the breathing, it's partly the experience of the prana. And, you know, if you belch or something at meal times, that's part of the meditation. Earth is the body, right? The element of earth.
Yes, exactly. So Earth is extension, like ice forming. Earth is like the lattice work. So the lattice work of your body is the earth element. As Catherine said, the caloricity, the fire element is the digestion and the metabolism of the body. And the air is the motility, the motion. Curiously, they don't include water.
Yeah, that is really curious.
And I'll leave it to your insight practice to ponder that question. Why is water not mentioned in this tactile process? Okay. And so these are evident in terms of body impact. All right.
And you'll notice this maybe most obviously when doing walking meditation, right? All of a sudden, just one step will be an incredible impact.
So we're paying attention to the 6 senses in terms of noting. A breath would be air element. A thought would be mind door. A touch, of course, tactile. Sound, hearing. You got the idea?
Oh, could we go through
Smelling.
these in order?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smelling through the nose.
So what Sensei's describing is also called the 6 sense doors. The 6 senses, there's the 6 senses, it's the 5 plus mind is considered the 6 because the mind we don't experience any of those senses unless the mind is there to register them, right? So that's why it's the sixth.
Thus,
Is
if
there
I
anything
may,
you'd like to add to that?
yeah, thus a thought is which door? Mind door. A feeling, like an emotion, is which door? Mind door. Right?
And we get more power in our insight practice if we can, back to Angie's question, we're stripping away the story. So say there's a mental arising or a feeling, an emotion is a mental arising, right? So we strip away the story and just go, for example, if it's some kind of passion we're feeling, then it might be fire.
So let's name these 6 doors.
Okay.
Ear, nose, eyes, tongue, touch, skin.
Hmm?
Taste.
That's taste, tongue.
Mind?
Mind door. Okay. Now, what does the I do?
Sorry, so I just want to emphasize for newer people that emotions are mental arising, and a feeling in this teaching we call a feeling like a sensation. Okay, so when an emotion arises, it's helpful to make a distinguishment between that.
So ears do what?
Your sound.
Hear. And eyes do what?
Wiggle. No, sorry.
See.
Sorry.
And noses.
Smell.
So now you have 12 elements. You have the sense organ and the consciousness of tasting, the consciousness of smelling, right? So now you have 6 more objects here, making the 18 elements. What are the other 6?
Did you say taste? Tongue?
So there's the thing tasted. So there's sweet and sour and so on. And there's things seen, blue and yellow and green. So there's the object seen, the eye that sees, and the consciousness that does the seeing. These are the 18 elements. In relationship to insight practice, you're noting seeing or the thing seen or the eye. Are you first aware of the eye? Are you first aware of the seeing? Or does your mind go to the thing seen? You see, we're breaking it up. We're breaking it down. So now you go, okay, I see Kara. We'll hold it now. There's the I, there's the object, Kara, and there's the scene. But where's the I and where's the Kara in that process?
Kara seeing.
I is a thought. Kara is a thought. There's no actual thing, object, called an I or a Kara. These are names. Therefore, that is the mind.
Nama.
Nama, the mind
Nama.
door. This is important because the nature of stories is they complexify. And in the complexity, you lose insight.
Right.
Insight is bare attention. I, seeing, object, mind, naming, Richard. Right? Now you've got the elements, you've got the core processes.
Okay, so breaking it down into these components is what leads us to penetrating Dharma. And here we're using Dharma as a synonym for truth. As Sensei said, the mind tends to complexify things, and that takes us away from truth. That takes us into story, which is entirely subjective. Okay, and that's where the mind, what they say, plays tricks on us.
So using the example of I see Richard that we've just done, what is the truth of that experience?
It's just perception.
Bare perception. And what is the truth of perception? What's the truth of the bare perception? What happened to that moment of consciousness?
Impermanent.
It's gone. That's like a lifetime ago if you're a computer, right? And it is
Empty.
Hmm?
Empty.
it's a empty. It doesn't have there's no inherent identity in that event. It's a shifting motion. There's no place to stop and hold it as something. And therefore it's a dance. And all dances are, by definition, struggles between positions, objects. So now you have the characteristics, anicca, dukkha, and, but
Anatta. So can we go through this? Impermanence. So truth, when we talk about truth, when we talk about perceiving the Dharma, perceiving the truth, we talk about what we said yesterday, that's the 4 marks of existence. So anicca, impermanence, as Sensei said, it's a struggle. It's also a dance, right? There's an infinite amount of space in that struggle / dance. And it's changing every microsecond. Permanence, struggle. That one doesn't really need a lot of explanation, right? And anatta, non-self, right? Is it a Richard or is it a shape? Is it a conglomeration of different elements and parts? And nibbana is bliss.
and why is it bliss? Because it's impermanent.
So it's free.
It's free. It's unconstrained. It's undefined. It's unknowable. It's unnameable. It's uncontainable. Therefore, it's blissful. Why do we like chocolate?
Because it's not chocolate.
Because there's a chemical rush. That would be taste. Taste and the chemistry of taste, which gives you
Fire.
dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which are metabolized by
Body.
fire in
The body.
the body. So who loves chocolate? No, the body loves chocolate. There's no you to love that. The body says chocolate.
And then we narrow it down to some receptor loves chocolate.
Right. This little part of the brain here gets a king, and this little part of the brain gets a king, and we all go king, right? And where did it go? As soon as you've had the king, where is it?
God.
Gone. So with anicca, dukkha, and anatta, you get freedom from uncertainty. You now know exactly what's going on in every single moment of time. The only
It's
place
anicca, dukkha, and
is
anatta,
anicca, dukkha,
and
nirvana.
nibbana.
What
That's
you
what's going on all the time.
what you don't know what's going on is in the story you call your life. Of course you don't know what's going on in your life because your life is not up to you. Your life is up to all the people around you telling you who you are. And whether you like it or not, and you get fight it or not, is part of who you are. But these are all just ideas.
What was that quote you had? I am who you
Oh, right. I am not what,
I think I am.
oh yeah, yes,
Like,
Mike. Thank you, David.
I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think that you think I am.
Thank you.
Ooh, well remembered.
Well remembered. So what's the whole thing we go on about in our lives is just that. Who do you think I am? I'm not what I think I am. I'm what you think you are. You're not. I'm what you think I'm not. I'm not that. And all of this is dukkha, because fundamentally it's imagination. It's a story, and the story is only true because you believe it, or don't believe it. You return to anicca, dukkha, and anatta, and you've returned to certainty. This is true. Okay.
So when we have contact with those 4 marks of existence, when we have that understanding in our body, we also, that gives us independence of others in our understanding of the teaching. So that's self-realization, right? It's not something that the teacher said, it's not something that we read, but we know that to be true from our own experience, okay? And the great thing about this is that develops confidence. So that develops confidence in one's own realization, or in the realization, we should say, because we don't own it, right? It just is. And it develops confidence and faith in the path and in the triple gem. That's really all the triple gem is ever doing.
So if one has the full realization of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, suffering is over forever.
Yay!
Personal suffering is finished because there's no self story there to be found except the one you write in your notebook. And that's not ultimately true. It's a thought, it's an imagination, it's a creation, and therefore it is impermanent. Therefore it is struggles, and therefore there's no self in it, because next week you're not going to be a plumber, you're going to be an electrician. Or you've decided you're not straight, you're gay. Or you've decided you're not gay, you're straight. Right? The story just keeps changing. So with anicca, dukkha, and anatta, and nirvana is bliss, you're free. Now, if this realization is really touches down in the core of the being, you're called awakened. Because you no longer believe anything about you or them ever again, other than movie time. Oh, Marty is playing the role of being Marty. What a good job he's doing.
He is doing a fabulous job.
He's a little typecast because he keeps playing the same Marty every day. But that's easier for David, who's playing David every day. And if we had to figure out who everybody was every day, we'd be back to anicca, dukkha, and anatta. I have no idea who you are, because I have no idea who I am, and I don't need to know. And either do you. And that is an understanding of anicca, dukkha, and anatta.
So when one overcomes one's own suffering, as Sensei is referring to, so a very natural byproduct of that is that compassion increases, right? Because we're super familiar with suffering. We've looked at it from every angle. We know how it works, and we also know how it's not really necessary. Like, we don't have to. Well, most suffering is unnecessary. Old age, sickness, and death are still necessary suffering.
But
Right.
only if you take it personally.
Right. Right. So then we naturally have compassion for when we observe others suffering, which is pretty much all the time. Right. Okay, so this implies the Bodhisattva path. We're kind of linking Theravada and Mahayana here. Right. And the Bodhisattva path is that commitment to help overcome universal suffering of conflicting emotions and primitive views. They're kind of like roommates. They tend to go together.
So from the Bodhisattva's position, or from the Arhat's position, Ava tells us, oh, I'm really upset because I broke up with my boyfriend yesterday. And the Bodhisattva and the Arhat go, aww, in order to kind of get your attention. And then they go, what boyfriend? What Ava? What relationship? Anicca, dukkha, anatta. And then she runs off to a therapist who will listen to her tell her story for 5 years.
No, Ava would never do that.
No,
No.
because Ava knows better, right? So as one gets a deeper realization of Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, as Catherine says, you become more compassionate, and also you become a lot less tolerant of stupidity, right? And this is the fundamental position where the ego gets caught. The ego gets caught in its own stories. That is really stupid. It's like locking yourself in your house with a key in your hand. I'm locked in, I can't get out. The key is in your hand, open the door.
Or,
No, I got to go on about how terrified I am and how terrible it is.
or it's like believing the movie or the
Yeah.
sitcom.
Yeah.
Right? Well, there was a time where I read some stories about how like soap opera stores, people who were acting in soap operas would be walking down the street and strangers would come up to them and say like, I can't believe you slept with them behind their back, and referring to the soap opera, right? So that's basically what we're doing all the time is we're believing we concoct this story and then we believe it and we act as though it were true.
Now,
And the role of the teacher in the Sangha is to be helping us remember, it's a movie, change the script, remember it's a movie.
so this is great because to extending this metaphor a bit, you can go, your job as a meditator is to be the director or the writer. Richard fell down and hurt his leg and the horse ran off and he was left in the Arctic freezing. Whatever. Let's put him in Hawaii on a surfboard. Right? Same line. No, let's put him in a sex movie instead. We'll put him in a porno movie where he's having sex in an airplane and then he falls out and you get the idea?
But he's safe.
But he's safe. Right.
Falls out into a beautiful bay. Right?
So
shallow, like deep enough to not hurt himself when he falls, but shallow enough to swim back.
like the audience that screams in a horror movie, or the women that cry over the relationship, or the guys that go ouch when somebody gets kicked in the you-know-whats, right? Like, why are you responding that way? It's a movie you're watching. It's a scene you're watching. So when you start to not believe your story, the reason you keep your storyline is because you're keeping you going. You're keeping your storyline going by planning and all that stuff. But when you see it in its essence, it is Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta. And then you're free. So does that mean you just kind of stop like a robot that's gone out of batteries? Well, in fact, yes, that's exactly what happens. Your mind stops. It goes into absolute stillness. But it doesn't mean you're frozen. You're still embodied. You still have sense stories. You still have a body that moves. You still have feelings that arise. You still have thoughts that arise. You just don't believe them anymore. You're not taking identity from them because identity is an illusion. There is no identity in anything, anywhere, ever. And the easiest way to do that is a car. You can go out and you can touch the car, right? And you say, there's a car. But show me the car. Well, there. No, that's paint. Oh, there. No, that's glass. Well, this. No, that's rubber. Okay, rubber is a thing. No. I don't know what rubber's made up of, but it's made up of something. That's hydrocarbon polyethylene difricolopicodics. And keep going down, and what do you get to?
Space.
Empty. So you can't find an identity anywhere about anything except the story about it. The story is Anicca, struggle, and there's just no real story to be found. And that is your freedom. But hard to get there in a moment. Yeah? So what do we have?
Retreats.
And 7 stages of purification. We got to work through it. So now we go back to the basics and we start building it block by block.
Right. So once more, as with really all the teachings, all the meditations, is we're just describing a process that happens naturally. So whether or not you study the 7 stages of purification, if you're on the spiritual path, if you're for a committed while, you're going through them, right? So it just helps to know what the processes are. And in particular, it's helpful because then we're more able to help other people describe what's going on. Okay, but whether or not you know it, this is what's happening. So
Slide 2.
slide 1?
Slide 1 is the, Dave's did,
Slide 1's the overview?
Dave did such a good
Is this
job
slide
of
1?
the, that's slide 1.
Okay,
We're after slide 2.
okay, so
So
let's,
these are, sorry,
excuse me, go ahead, these are?
these are the 7 purifications. So if you're going to be a doctor, do we figure you just, here's a knife, go to it? Or you want to fly a plane, we go just, okay, here's the plane, go fly it. Or here's a car, go drive it. No. So this is how you build that, this is how you build the realization of Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, and Nirvana is bliss. You got to start with the pieces. So the progress of Insight Overview is we're going to go through 7 purifications in the next 2 weeks. We can't go into huge depth on all of them. There's books and books and books and books written on each one. But we'll give you the overview.
Okay, so we'll be talking about purification of conduct or sila.
And the 16 stages of insight will come under these subheadings, will be subheadings in various places in this process that will become clear in a later.
Right. Okay. So when we talk about purification of conduct, so that's with sila, sometimes translated as ethics, but that gets a little bit tricky because then as Westerners, we sort of snap right into maybe the Greek notion of ethics or the Judeo-Christian notion of ethics. And there's some similarities, but they're not the same thing. So we like to translate it as coolness in the sense of like a calm body of water, right? There aren't sort of feelings and arisings kind of still ruffling one's feathers.
And don't make the mistake of thinking coolness is like hippie cool or culturally cool. Cool is like temperature cool. You're cool on the inside. I mean, not cold, right? But like chill.
It really implies a lot of self-knowledge, right? Well, non-self-knowledge, knowledge of
Non-self.
familiarity with the conditioning and the responses to the conditioning, right? Because then someone can really say or do anything and for example, we're not offended, right? Because we know like, oh yeah, I am like that sometimes, or oh, we get curious, like, oh, really? What is it about that? Rather than I am not. And that when we get reactionary, that would be a ripple in the pond or a tidal wave, depending on how reactionary we get.
Now, it gets complicated because, for instance, you could say, well, Andy is really mouthy. And
especially with that mask on.
especially with that. And you go, okay. Andy would go, whoa, that's interesting. I never thought of myself as mouthy as Sensei, right? And relatively, that's true. I'm mouthier than Andy is generally, although I hear he's really much more mouthy when I'm not around. But having said that, right, he could go, yes, I'm mouthy relative to maybe Davin, who we would never accuse of being mouthy. Maybe Aurora has a different feeling about that. But in any case, it's like relative terms, right? So you can go, oh yeah, I'm mouthy, or I'm relatively mouthy, or I'm relatively not mouthy, right? But then you go, okay, well, why am I mouthy? It's because I have trying to keep my nervousness at bay, or am I mouthy because I have things I want to share, or maybe you're not mouthy, so you think I'm mouthy because you're less mouthy. You see what I'm saying? So the process of being cool about it is so that you don't get all worked up in the storyline about being or not being mouthy, or defending or not defending against being mouthy, and why are you telling me mouthy, and fuck off with the mouthy, I'm not mouthy, right? And then you get in huge fights and you don't talk to each other for 10 years, right? And you miss the entire point of the exercise, which is, mouthy, relative to cool, look at it, examine it, approach it, understand it. It is by definition.
Impermanent.
Come on, let's hear it.
Nietzsche,
Nietzsche,
Duca.
Duca.
I love that.
And then what happens with your reaction to whether you're mouthy or not?
It disappears. And it does take a while to get to that coolness. It's a process. So just to circle back on our example, so say someone calls Andy mouthy, and he's like, I am not mouthy. And then as the awesome insight practitioner that he is, instead of saying that, he goes, oh, fire.
Or air, speaking, or mind, concept, right? He's meditating on the nature of Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, but he's also seeing, oh, this is a thought. It's arising. It's coming, it's triggered by this thought that triggers that thought that brings me into this story that takes me to this feeling, right? Now you're doing insight practice, yes.
Is coolness the same as equanimity?
It's another word for it. The root word is
Ultimately.
silata, which means to be cool. Okay,
Sorry,
now.
just on the mic, just please look at the DJ, because he's got to turn the sound up before he starts speaking.
Yeah, they probably just got off the question. You might want to repeat it.
I asked if coolness was the same as equanimity.
Basically, yes. And again, the root word is silata in Sanskrit, which means to be cool. Okay, so the conduct, what we're trying to do is create the conditions and the supporting conditions for you to be successful. So if we give you an airplane, we just don't give you the key and go back to the coffee shop and have a cup of coffee while you crash the plane into the Empire State Building, right? You need lessons. So the number one purification that you need in order to be able to be successful with the understanding and the insights that come later is morality, or sila. And that means you got to get your mind and your heart and your body and your desires in a place where it's consistent with the realization. So if you're sitting in the bar drinking and getting blasted and chasing the chicky poo on the other side of the pool table, probably you're not in that moment in a state of
Sila.
sila. Cool. You might be, which case you're bodhisattva, but you might not be, which case you got to. So it's about focusing your attention. It's about where you're putting your energy. It's about how you're engaging in the moment. So the best way to do that is to be quote unquote ethical.
And this is why Vajrayana is considered the most dangerous path, is because it's so easy to kid ourselves and say, oh, I am in a complete case, a state of sila while I'm drinking and chasing the hot guy on the other side of the pool table, right? Because as a bodhisattva, one can be, right? And there's not really any arbiter to help one determine whether one is or not, except this is why ruthless self-honesty is so essential. And this is why spending as much time around the teachers is very essential, so that we have that feedback loop, right? Because, and the Sangha and an engaged Sangha, not just kind of bodies or people somewhere, but people who are awakening, who are around us, who are going to tell us, like, you are totally not in sila, you are just trying to get laid, right? And who will engage with us when we kind of say, like, no, I'm not attached. And, you know, we need people who will be like, I don't think so. Take a closer look. Because the world is filled with, well, I don't know, filled with, but there's lots of Mahayana practitioners who Yeah, we can fool ourselves. That's a significant, one needs to be aware of those pitfalls on this path, right? And one needs to be very alert to not kidding oneself, or the path doesn't work is the thing.
So not to put a too fine a point on it, but be clear that it is not the sex or the beer that is the problem.
Good point.
The beer and the sex are neutral. It's the mind that engages in it and the stories that go along with it that determine the coolness.
And to break it down even further, it's the clinging, the grasping, the attachment,
Or the aversion in a negative.
or the aversion. Absolutely.
So we start with some very basic premises. We call the precepts, the paramis, the what else? The bojangas. There's a whole list of activities that you can engage in to keep your cool. And we'll start with the simple ones, which are the precepts. So the precept is a training. It says, I undertake to train myself. So obviously, are you in a state of non-clinging if you're stealing? No, because you wouldn't steal if you're in a state of non-clinging. So the precept says, I undertake to train myself to refrain from taking that which is not given. So you don't fall into a subconscious stealing. Oh, the last piece of chocolate on the table, it's just sitting there, nobody wants it. I'll just sort of take it for myself. Thank you very much. It's done. Yeah. Oh, did you want that chocolate? Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Pardon me, I apologize. Right. So
These are quite profound. Yeah, we can laugh about the chocolate and, oh, a square of chocolate doesn't matter. But living in community gives us great opportunities to reflect on this, right? Because like, oh, there's that thing there and nobody's using it, so I guess I can take it, right? And on the one hand, that's a very, maybe that thing is there so that people will use it, right? But maybe it's not. Maybe it's waiting for a different purpose.
now, just to remind you again that after this talk is over, your practice is the rise and fall of the abdomen and trying to note the distinction between nama and rupa. Okay? Nama is the naming. That's a thought, that's an idea, that's a name. That's a feeling, like an emotion. That's a mental process. That's a thought. That's a feeling. That's a name process. That's nama, nama, nama. And then a smell or a taste or a touch or the feeling of air, right? Or a tactile thing. That's rupa. And you want to note which one's which. And rupa, nama. Rise and fall of the abdomen is your focus. Right? The belly rising is rupa. The noting of the belly rising is nama. Okay, is this really clear? Now you want, this is your whole practice. That's all there is to it. You go, oh, seeing Marty, seeing rupa, Marty, nama, glasses, nama, black. Because I'm saying
nama.
black, it's nama, but the seeing of the black is rupa. The color itself is rupa. So you want to see, does nama precede rupa? Or does rupa precede nama? Maybe you get nama, 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 rupa. Rupa, 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 nama. Nama, rupa, rupa, nama. This is your whole practice. That's all there is to it. Rise and fall of the abdomen, noting. Just the noting. You don't have to write a book about it. You're just noting. Rupa, nama, 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 rupa, rupa, nama, rupa, nama, whatever it is. That's it. Okay, so are you clear on your practice for the day?
Yeah.
Sitting,
Walking.
walking, standing, lying down. Nama.
This is one of the reasons why dawn and dusk are considered so conducive to meditation, because the rupa is somewhat obscured by the changing light. So it slows down the nama. Right? We really aren't, it takes us longer to discern what that rupa is.
Duncan?
Yes. Great.
Rupa, Rupa, Rupa.
Rupa Rupa Nama.
Nama and Rupa, we don't need to distinguish the other 18.
Not particularly, but you will if you're hearing, right? And the sound is registering. That's Rupa. Sound is registering Rupa, right? But you are also philosophically understanding that that's happening with three things, right? The ear, the sound, and the consciousness. So you don't have
That's
to think.
connecting that you're in the sound.
Yeah, you don't have to think that out. But this is the basic element, right? It's like not Richard is hearing Sensei talk. That's way down the line in concept, right? But right now it's sound is happening to the ear organ and the consciousness that can register that Rupa. Does that make sense? It's how you understand it more than like, I got to make notes. You're not making notes about all this. Okay. All right. So I undertake to train myself. What else? To refrain from.
Sorry, if I can just go further with Richard's question. So once we're breaking it, Nama and Rupa is kind of the barest essence. And then from there, it breaks down into the six senses and six sense doors and the objects of those. And so I'm wondering about, so we want to try to get it down to Nama Rupa.
Yeah, because you don't want to get into philosophical dissertations, but there is an understanding that when you're hearing me speak, let me put it this way. I'm speaking, normally you're just focusing on the words and the meaning. You're not necessarily recognizing that the ear is
sound
hearing
vibrations.
sound that the brain is interpreting as an idea.
So the six senses might be a stepping stone on the way to getting it down to Nama Rupa.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, could be.
Right.
Oh.
Especially maybe not as much for Richard because he's been in retreat for 2 weeks, but since you've just flown in from Toronto, it takes a while to leave all of that behind.
So we're not going to go to we're not going to go into the precepts in detail, but when you're living, this is in terms of how to carry this practice forward in your life when you're out of retreat and how to maintain it while you're in retreat and basically how to just orientate your life so that you're not having to fight extra hard when you do sit down on the cushion to actually get any kind of realization. You're making your life simpler, simpler, simpler in order to get closer and closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta so that you get closer and closer and closer to awakening and then you can fly the fucking plane, right? So I undertake to train myself to refrain from taking that which is not given. I undertake to train myself to refrain from taking life unnecessarily, like killing.
Or interrupting somebody,
Or interrupting somebody.
right? Think about what is it to kind of take life force, right? It's not just killing.
Not listening to someone, ignoring them. These are always a kind of killing, right?
Killjoy.
Killjoy. What's the other ones?
I undertake to train myself to refrain from just different impersonations of speech. False,
Idle,
harsh,
gossip, redundant, trivial
speech, right?
speech.
That's right, idle speech.
Because idle speech takes you into story, and story takes you away from. Yeah. So the teaching, the classic teaching is you speak Dharma or you remain silent. Now, if Aurora is teaching me how to saute bananas, right, then the speech is about sauteing bananas. It's not about, what I'm going to be when I'm an aeronautical engineer or something, unless the speech is about aeronautical engineering, in which case, but it's the point. You're not just kind of chatting, because chatting takes you into me. Takes you into your story, takes into your identity. So all the speech things is about kind of staying as close as you can to Nama Rupa. anicca dukkha anatta, and necessary and necessary useful transformation of information, or transmission.
And an interesting aspect of the precepts is we've committed to maintaining them for ourselves, and we've also committed to the corollary to that is helping other people uphold the precepts, even if they've never heard of them. So if some stranger is yakking your ear off, you might change the conversation or take control of the situation just so they're not indulging in idle speech with you, right? Because then they'll feel better. It's more wholesome.
So I think you get the idea on how these work. And so just for the people who haven't heard them before, we'll just name the basic 5, not killing, not stealing, not overindulging in senses to the point that you're just kind of blotto. Speech, keeping your speech useful.
Generosity.
Not taking that.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank.
High chairs or something.
No, that's the 8. Killing, stealing, overindulgence in the senses, speech, and the other one.
Eating?
So maybe overeating.
That would be
overindulgence.
senses.
That's the overindulgence in the senses. Anyway, there's a 5th one out there somewhere. Yes.
Could you speak a bit more about around the not interrupting for the not killing? You said not interrupting either, or maybe sometimes interrupting when it's appropriate, but
Yeah, well, that's a great question and a great example of how the precepts are profound meditations, right? Because if someone is speaking to you because they really have something that they, maybe they really feel they need to share, or it's something that's really on their heart, and for some reason you miss that, and you just kind of go like, oh, well, let me talk about me, right? In a sense, you've kind of interrupted their life force, especially if we do it in such a way that it kind of stuffs it back energetically, right?
So
And then that links to the nature of our speech. Then that might be a form of harsh speech.
So if you're in a state of cool, sila, which is what the precepts are trying to foster or support, then you can say, oh, letting this story go on is not conducive to their liberation. It's not taking them closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It's taking them farther away from anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Therefore, I'm going to interrupt it. But if they lack confidence and they're insecure, and then all you're going to do by interrupting that speech is make them feel more insecure and more unheard, then you're not getting them closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta. You're actually getting them farther away. So you need to be in a state of cool to recognize whether or not you should let them go on interrupted, because it will support them to be stronger and clearer, and then they can hear anicca, dukkha, anatta better, or whether it's taking them farther away from anicca, dukkha, anatta. And this is a call that you have to make from you sitting in anicca, dukkha, and anatta, so that your motivation and the reason you're doing it is compassionate, rather than just because you want to talk or you want to get your thing out or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is why, as Catherine said just a minute ago, these are meditations. These aren't just rules. You're not just obeying a rule. You're going, what is good speech? Is this the time, or is this not the time? Is this useful? Is this not useful? Is it helping or is it not helping? And judge accordingly. And you won't always be right, because it is a
a dance.
training.
Yeah.
I undertake to train myself to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out.
And this is why we're so keen on training, is because it's only in the doing that we learn and that we can develop skill. Because it is, the development of the skill takes a lifetime, for sure.
So another,
And one of the great things about practicing in community is we can see that. We can observe the different levels of skill, and maybe observe You know, is there a correlation between that and the amount of engagement that the person has? You know, the number of mistakes that they've made to develop that skill. And that develops compassion for mistakes, right? And then we come back to, that's why the motivation is so important.
So there's another aspect to Sila. You
Please.
move on?
Mhm.
Yeah. There's another aspect to Sila, which is called restraint. Now, restraint is a dirty word in our culture. Do not restrain your consumption. Do not restrain your shopping. Do not restrain your stuff. Don't restrain your feelings. Don't restrain your thoughts. Don't restrain nothing. Just get bigger and bigger and fatter and get obese, because we're not into restraint. Restraint is prison. Restraint is like oppression. Restraint is hierarchical male authoritative power of fascist control of the universe. But it also takes you away from the development of meditation without restraint. So restraint is restraining from non-Sila activity. So what would Sila activity be? Generosity, compassion, loving kindness, sympathetic joy, equanimity, keeping the precepts, helping people wake up, helping people get closer to anicca, dukkha, anatta, and nirvana bliss. That would be Sila activity, right? So by restraining, you're allowing yourself room to develop the ground. You're opening the ground to sow the seeds of a anicca, dukkha, and anatta in your being. So restraint is really important. It allows for the development of meditation. Your meditation gets better if you don't, oh, I got to get a cup of tea. Or, oh, now I got to go for a walk. Oh, well, now I'll just go see what the cat's doing. Maybe the cat needs my help, right? It's like you're restrained. Nope, I'm sitting here meditating. This is getting me closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta. I'm doing my practice, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. I'm not going to go check my emails. That's not going to take me closer to anicca, dukkha.
Oh, right. Restraint from gadgets.
Restraint from gadgets,
Ooh.
internet
Ooh.
activity, chocolate, sometimes.
So we might, before enjoying that totally delicious and succulent baklava, we might say, oh, have the teachers been offered baklava yet? Or is it all right? Is this for everybody? Can I go ahead and eat this? Or do we just go?
So we said,
I think that Duncan has a question.
Oh, I just wanted to say the fifth one was the sexual misconduct.
oh, right. This is curious. We missed that.
That's not the same as the overindulging
No,
in the
that's a different
senses.
They have two intoxicants that disturb the mind and sexual misconduct.
Right.
Split.
Oh, thank you.
So sexual misconduct is basically using sex as a way to reinforce one's identity. It's a way of trying to get satisfaction that you can't find because you're avoiding anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It's using sexual energy as simply as a dose deliverer, right? It's okay. Dose is good. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, that's all good. But if it's pulling you away from the realization of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, then it's no longer Sila, right? It's now addiction, or it's like an attempt to get me in the game, right? Because one of the great ways we know about who we are is how we sex. Who we sex with, when, how, who. This is all about me and my story, right? It tells me who I am. It tells me where I fit. So using sex that way is not taking you closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta, right? But using sex in order to get closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta, well, there is literally nothing here. It's empty in its own nature. Then sex is, in fact, conducive. So it's not the thing. It's not the beer. It's not the chocolate. It's not the sex. It's how it's used.
And you ran us through such a great example of why it's a profound meditation, right? And how much time and how tricky it is. Again, this is why Vajrayana is considered so dangerous, is because when we're having sex or wanting to have sex or about to have sex or just had sex, right? The system is flooded with so many different hormones that it is very challenging to discern, what is actually going on here, right?
Anyway, like we said, they're meditations. They get more sophisticated as you go into it and examine more. And from the path of insight, if you're an insight practitioner, of course, and if you are having sex and you're an insight practitioner, you are understanding the nature of anicca,
Nama and Rupa.
dukkha, anatta, namarupa, while engaged in sexual behavior. You're not just zoned out. Right? Now, the third aspect, thank you, Duncan. The third aspect of sila shows up in this book,
The Visuddhimagga.
the Visuddhimagga. And as you know, there's, as Catherine pointed to you yesterday, there are 2 volumes. And the way this book opens, it says a lot about the nature of sila. So
Okay. May I?
Yeah.
Okay, so it opens like this. The book opens like this. There are the inner tangle and the outer tangle. This generation is entangled in a tangle. And so I ask of Gautama this question: who succeeds in disentangling this tangle?
okay, that's the whole book.
Isn't it neat that he said, there's 4 generations in 100 years, and so that was 2,500 years ago. So that's 10,000 generations ago, is
Okay,
it?
math.
And isn't it amazing we can still say this generation is entangled in a tangle?
It's human. So this, and this, and this, and those, and the other 10,000 books on religion or philosophy or meditation in the world are talking about one point: the tangle. So insight, in the insight practice with the Namarupa, the rise and the fall, what you're learning to do is see the skein of the threads of your being all tangled up in identities and feelings and emotions and sensations and identities and so on. And you're just slowly spreading the threads out and seeing how things connect and tie to each other, and where stuff comes up and where things goes down.
I wonder if this is where people who work with their hands still really have an advantage, because if you've ever had like a full skein of yarn that was tangled,
Yeah.
it's a desperate situation. If you've got to untangle that, it is formidable.
Especially if you've got a time limit.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a time limit.
And you do have a time, like Marty said, no, it's okay, just say it.
Marty said, especially if you have a time limit.
And the time limit is actually real.
It's your life.
It's your life.
It's your lifespan, right? We don't know how much time we have to disentangle the tangle, right? And we kind of say like, oh, maybe I've got 70, 80, oh, it's getting longer, maybe I have 90 years. But in fact, I might have another 12 hours, right? So there's an urgency. I was in the food forest putting away the electric fence, and this 250-meter strand of electrical wire got tangled. And I really thought I was going to start crying because it was so hard to disentangle. So if we think like that's our mind, that's our heart, it's in a big messy heap, right? So yeah, it's much nicer if it's in a tidy spool, right? And that's what we're teaching all the time.
I like that one. The tangle doesn't stop because you're dreaming.
No.
And the tangle doesn't stop because you're dead. The tangle continues because the nature of clinging isn't tied to your body. The nature of clinging isn't tied to this lifetime and your name. This tangle is tied to being human. The human condition, the human event is by definition entangled in its own tangle. And the amazing thing about the human being is they have the ability to disentangle the tangle.
That's right.
If you don't do it this lifetime, you're going to do it next time, because inevitably the evolutionary thrust of humanity is to be able to see the tangle and then be able to disentangle the tangle.
That's right.
And when you've disentangled the tangle, you can literally say you're no longer a human being in the classic terminology of that. You are what they call a Arya. Don't get caught into Hitler, but you are a noble. You've changed your lineage, and in fact, at the awakening moment, that's the last stage of insight. Change of lineage. You're no longer actually human in the classical sense.
And I believe that's when what they used to call junk DNA. I think
Right.
those unused DNA turn on.
All the circuits turn on. All this stuff, junk DNA, like that.
Maybe they don't call it that anymore.
I know.
Arya means noble, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we get the ennobling eightfold path, the ennobling truths, right? Because a person who understands those, who lives by those, who embodies those, is a noble person.
So let's look at the tangle, because that's fundamentally what you're going to be doing anyway. So what does tangle mean? Clinging, identity, agendas,
Living in the past, living in the future,
fears,
hopes,
longing,
loneliness.
the idea of me. Ever say me? I? What do I think? What do I feel? Let's talk about me. Enough about me. What do you think about me? Me. Right? This is the tangle. The very idea of I is the tangle. It's not like I am in a tangle. The I is the tangle, by definition. Now, this tangle runs on what they call the four bonds, or the four floods, or the four defilements.
And could I just say, it's interesting that the nature of the ego is always to kind of embellish its self-image, right? We kind of adorn our self-image in whatever way we think is most attractive. Yeah. And yet the nature of the self is to be boring and tedious. Right? We spend all this time trying to make the best self that we can, right? But it doesn't matter. It's still boring and tedious, right? Have you ever been stuck listening to somebody tell you how amazing they are? Like even if they are, it's really boring, isn't it? Okay.
Why is it boring? Because it's not anicca, dukkha, and anatta. What makes it interesting? When you're in anicca, dukkha, and anatta, and you're listening to a really boring story. Because when you're in anicca, dukkha, and anatta, nirvana's bliss, there's no such thing as boring.
That's
It's
right.
just, wow, what a movie.
Yeah.
Thus, people who irritate you now are infinitely entertaining. Wow, how do they
That's
keep doing that?
freedom.
Yeah.
That's freedom right there.
Right? So we're spending all this time trying to get Aurora to talk, right? Boy, okay, come on, right? And then next week, she's going to just, you're going to shut her up, right? She's going to talk. And we're like, wow, that's really boring, right? There is no win position here,
That's right.
unless
That's
it's
right.
anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So I'm sorry to say you're all equally boring, as is Catherine.
Yeah.
We've spent 22 years with
Absolutely.
this very boring person.
I find myself extremely boring at times.
And I'm even more boring. I've spent 71 years with this incredibly boring
That's
person.
really true, isn't it?
Oh, I did this and I did that. And yeah. Okay. Oh, you went to the Himalayas. Yeah. Oh, you went to Japan. Uh-huh. Right. Oh, you went to Cranbrook. Yeah. Like, so what? From the point of view of story, it's story. So let's enjoy it, right? But if you're in anicca, dukkha, and anatta, it's interesting. It's enjoyable. It's kind of fascinating in a certain way. But if you're not, it's like, I went to work today. Oh. And then I came home. I ate dinner. Cool. And then I went to bed. Really? And then and I went to work. Really? Right? It's not all that interesting, right? So
So we can't help other people. Well, we try, But when we're in realizing, as Sensei says, the anicca, dukkha, and anatta, then we're fresh, right? And anything is interesting. And if we can help them to be recognizing anicca, dukkha, and anatta, now you really start the freshness, the vitality starts to interact with each other, right?
Okay.
And so that's what we created Clear Sky for, right? That's what the container is about. And that's what the Sangha's path is about.
Yep. So how do you get closer to anicca, dukkha, and anatta?
How, Sensei? How? How?
Pay attention.
Bare attention, pure perception, rise and fall, nama rupa. It's bringing you closer. Story is taking you farther. And so we do. So come back to it. Nama rupa, rise and fall, abdomen rising, falling. Nama rupa. Oh, impermanence. Oh, look, that's a struggle. Oh, look, there's no self in that. Oh, you're there. Oops. Where am I? Oops, lost it. Okay. So the four defilements,
The four
or the Boer
defilements.
bonds, or the Boer floods.
Four defilements are sometimes called the four bonds and sometimes called the four floods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sense desires. Because they take you into why that desire. They take you into story and clinging.
So chocolate may be a defilement, depending on your state, right? Or it may be nibbana.
And what's the difference? Whether you're experiencing chocolate from the point of view of, yeah, you got it. Okay.
And fill in the blank, whatever your favorite sense desire is.
Right.
Right? Tea. Is it a defilement? Or is it liberation?
Oh, I got a good one. Downtime. How many people think downtime is a good thing? Yeah, probably. And what do you do with your downtime? You probably go even more into story. So in other words, why you like downtime is it's all about me.
Okay. So ready for the second
Yeah.
defilement? Attachment to existence.
Now, this is the very interesting thing about a human being is you think you actually want to keep existing. Like you want to be here tomorrow. But that's your thought. Anicca, dukkha, and anatta doesn't care. Because it just creates another form. This is really key. If you're identified with this story, then you're going to be afraid of death. But if you realize the story is just a story, and the next time I'll be having his story or something. Each story is unique, but every unique thing is impermanent and a struggle, and it doesn't have a self in it. So there's no need to be attached to existing, because existing is what happens. There'll just be somebody else with a big mouth sitting in this chair yakking on and on and on, entertaining you, hopefully. Okay, attachment to existence.
Okay, third one is false views.
False views. I am an introverted, feeling, sensing, judgmental. I am a Leo ascendant, double Scorpio whammy. I am a 9 Enneagram with a 4 subwing, subtext, hyper-tensed, human-designed organism of infinite possibilities, tarot to the infinite of Kabbalah wisdom.
Baby boomers are like this. Right? Millennials are like that.
Women are like this. Men are like that. Not relatively true, relative stories, sure. But in essence, no such creature as a man. There's no such creature as a woman.
No such creature as a Canadian, American, Israeli, Arab, South African.
Okay, fourth,
Ignorance.
ignorance. Ignoring the fact. What are you ignoring?
Anicca, dukkha, anatta.
That's it?
And the answer was anicca, dukkha, and anatta.
Oh,
In
right,
case they
sorry,
couldn't hear
right.
it.
Yeah, sorry. Good job.
Thank
What are
you.
you ignoring?
Anicca, dukkha, and anatta.
When you're not ignoring anicca, dukkha, and anatta, what's your problem?
No problem.
When you're not ignoring anicca, dukkha, and anatta, who are you?
Nobody.
Whatever happens next. When you're not ignoring anicca, dukkha, and anatta, what are you going to do now?
Compassion.
Yeah, be compassionate, yes. Sit there until it's time to not sit there. All right.
Okay, so the four defilements are part of the tangle, an essential part of the tangle. Another essential part of the tangle are the three cravings, also known as the three tanas. So there's the sensual craving for sensual experiences, kamatana. There's the craving to becoming, or bhavatana.
Kind of identity. Who am I?
We took a trip to Thailand, and Sensei pointed out, you came into, I was sharing a room with a woman, an artist, and I was sitting there reading my book. I'm like reading it very attentively, and she was laying on the bed, massaging just kind of going like this on the lamp. The lamp was a piece of carved wood, right? So Sensei walked in the door and was like, oh my gosh, perfect example of bhavatana. I was reading to kind of get more information, and she was enjoying just the feeling of rubbing the lamp,
Kamatana.
caressing the lamp, kamatana.
And then, of course, in the next bed, there was somebody just kind of staring into empty space, hoping nothing would happen.
And that's the craving for non-becoming,
Vibhava.
vibhava.
Not something Angie probably really identifies with. But maybe something that Andy kind of can get behind. As long as nothing's happening, it's okay, right? That's vibhavadana. Clinging to nothing happening. I mean, nothing, not nothing, but nothing that it requires any kind of human response. So these are three more aspects of the Tana. Okay, so this generation is entangled in a tangle. So I asked Gautama this question: who is it who succeeds in disentangling this tangle? And now the Buddha turns in her infinite wisdom and compassion and says,
When a wise person, established well in virtue,
Sila,
develops consciousness and understanding,
meditation, insight,
then as a professional Dharma practitioner, the original text says monk, then as a professional Dharma practitioner, ardent and sagacious, they succeed in disentangling this tangle. Ardent. Right? We really have to apply ourselves to this.
Yeah, this is not easy. Because if you don't do anything, you're going to go to story.
And it's sagacious to apply ourselves. Okay. Whoop. Oh, gosh, what just happened? That was amazing.
Did you lose something?
Oh, my gosh.
Should I
It's just
carry on?
sometimes, yeah, carry on, please.
Okay, so when a wise person develops consciousness, understanding, and sagacious. So wisdom is mentioned like 3 times. So there's 3 kinds of wisdom here. First of all, consciousness means meditation. You're developing your meditative mind. So when it says establishes virtue, we've already talked a bit about virtue, but develops consciousness means develops a mind that can stay on the subject of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. You're developing the consciousness that can ride that pony, right?
That takes a while.
And understanding is about insight. Anicca, dukkha, nama, rupa, feeling, sensing, thinking, right? So this is what it means by understanding. You understand the nature of impermanence and so on. And a
And
monk, Catherine's already expressed.
Okay.
But wise means native understanding. You're street smart. If you're not street smart, you don't get to the teaching. Street smart says it like this game is, there's something wrong with this game that I'm playing called life.
Or even recognizing that there's a tangle
Yeah, even recognize
to be untangled,
right. That's wise. Exactly.
right? Because unfortunately, most people are slow to get it there.
It's understanding the world as it is. You know, this is birth and death. You know, life's come, life's go. People get rich, people get poor, people get sick. This is like, I need an alternative understanding, right? The understanding of just get married, have kids, die, you know, be a cow, get my pension, right? This is like, no, there's more to life than this. That's why, that's the wise they're talking about.
When I was living in Japan, I really wanted to actually live there. I really wanted to actually understand that country. So for a time, I committed to learning about their political system, and I knew all the parties and all the politicians. And it was when Koizumi was president. He was that single father of that was so kind of, he was kind of like Trudeau, like a Japanese Trudeau, and his vice was this really charismatic woman, which I think she was the first woman to be in high office. So it was an exciting time. I got really into it and knew all the English and the Japanese for all the different houses and blah, blah, blah. Knew the electoral process and came down to human nature. I was like, oh, they're just kind of stabbing each other in the back and trying to get power. And then, you know, you've got some who have better intentions than others, and you have others that have self-interested intentions. And it's like, oh, okay, guess I don't need to study any other political system, right? But it's good to do it once.
So
Comes back to
understanding.
anicca,
Dukkha.
dukkha, and anatta.
So the second wisdom, or the second wise, right? Wise, when a wise person, is understanding as a form of insight. Understanding that the reason you have this feeling that you're no good unless you have a big paying career, right? Is you understand the conditions by which to produce that view, right? Or that you're not attractive if you don't have the right breasts or something, right? It's like you understand where that view got built. It's not your property. It's not like inherently true. It's something programmed, right? And so this is what they mean by understanding as forms of insight. And these insights come in while you're practicing, because the closer you are to rise and fall, the cleaner your insights are about how things work.
That's right.
The farther away you are from rise and fall, Namarupa, and the more you're in story, the less clear your insights are.
Because the more tangled the tangle is.
The more tangled the tangle is. So the more you get entangled in you, the less clear the insights. The less entangled you are in you, the clearer the insights, the closer you get to understand it. And the third wise thing is sagacious. And the sagacious means making right decisions. It's about making a decision that's going to foster and develop your anicca, dukkha, and anatta realization, not making decisions that take you farther away from it, that get you caught up in your story of your life forever. So you go, oh, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go and invest in becoming a bodybuilder to win a gold medal, because maybe when you're 20, fine, but you know, like there's better things to do with your time.
Like disentangling the tangle.
Like disentangling the tangle. So one avoids, sagacious here means one avoids getting into suffering states. Oh, no, that's going to be dukkha. Not going there. I'm not going to get into this argument. I'm not going to get into this story. I'm not going to get into this dialogue. I'm not going to get into this event, because fundamentally it's going to take me away from. Now, eventually nothing can take you away from anicca, dukkha, and anatta. But until then, you need training wheels. And so the whole teaching is training wheels. Is training wheels on your bike until you don't need them, in which case nothing can take you away. But if you do that too soon, you drown. If you don't know how to swim, you drown. So we've got to teach you how to swim before we throw you in the ocean. Right? That's what every spiritual teaching is doing. All right. Good for the day.
Good place to end there.
Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about the lying down meditation.
Sure.
Is it only at bedtime or
Nope.
during the day?
Nope,
And what
but-
do you focus on?
Rise and fall of the belly.
Is it lying on the back or the side?
Doesn't matter. The one thing they recommend is you don't lie on your belly, because lying on your belly puts you into a kind of a chemical biorhythm that's like knocked out. That's why so many people like sleep on their belly, because it just knocks them out. But it's better to sleep on your back or on your right side. Then the reason you want to be on your right
Yeah, your right side.
is so your heart is up, less pressure on the heart. So if you sleep on your
So,
right
like,
side, there's
The
less
weight
pressure
of the body isn't compressing the
on
heart.
the heart. And so it's easier to maintain. Why? It's easier to maintain contact with Anicca Dukkha Anatta. All these things are just helpful ways to help you be closer.
Traditionally, we lay on our right side. We have our arm under our head like this, and the knees are slightly bent. So not fetal position, but not straight. And that's a
your
good
arm-
position because it's easy to rest, but it's hard to fall asleep in that position.
Right. And
So it's easier to use it as a meditation.
and the other arm is down your side. And
Right,
again,
down this side.
like Catherine says, the reason is to get rest, but keep the sleep relatively light so that your consciousness is closer to the understanding of. Pretty straightforward, right? So Namarupa, 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 18 elements, sense doors, sense objects, rise and fall. My voice is,
Rupa.
Vibration.
my words are
Rupa.
Nama. A word is an idea, right? Car, dog, cat, that's an idea. So that is Nama. But the sound is Rupa. And you just want to try as much as you can without killing yourself to just follow the sequence as it comes along while you're sitting. Smelling. What's that smell?
Nama.
Oh, different smell. Oh, that's coffee. There you go. And then that adherence or that staying close to just the Namarupa, you go, oh, I just named coffee and smelling, but now I'm thinking about my car. Wow, it's gone. It's like everything's gone. Everything's disappearing out from underneath me. Anicca! Yay!
So in the 60-40-20 ratio, where would we put the lying down in there? Add it
After that,
after that.
before that,
60-40-20 and
some other time.
some other time. Okay.
You have 24 hours in a day. I know this is a revelation, but there are 24 hours in a day. So if you're not sitting and you're not standing and you're not walking, you must be.
That's so bed sleep time. That we go to sleep like that, basically.
Yeah.
Instead of sleeping. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's not bonus lying down
yeah.
on top of.
Now, if you want to
On
lie
top
down
of
during the
sleep
day,
time.
that's fine.
Sorry, remember this? Yeah, good question. So it's broken down for monastic people or conventional people. Would that be the female version of monastic? People living in a convent or monastery, right? So they did say classically, 25% of the day sitting, meditating, 25% walking, 25% standing, 25% lying down in a retreat situation. But given our ratio 60, 40, 20, how would that work?
Well, so the argumentation is that you're going to be walking around making dinner, or you're going to go for a walk, and or you're going
Or
to go to the
walking
bathroom,
meals.
or you're going to walk to your laundry or whatever so that's when you're doing your walking.
Walking on your alms round,
Right.
or not alms round, but food round.
And you're going to be
Like they'd have to walk to the village.
standing is a bit of an input, but if you're standing in line for your meal to get your lunch, or you're standing waiting for the washroom, or you're standing there waiting for paint to dry, and that's your standing time. So it's not like you do it on a schedule. The sitting and the walking maybe you do on a schedule, but the rest you do while you're doing it. So if you lie down after lunch for half an hour, then that's 1/2 hour of your 6 hours. Now, if you're new to the game, maybe you're not ready for 6 hours lying down. Maybe you need 8 or 10. Okay, fair enough. But moving towards that idea. That and also the idea is that even if you're lying down, you're still practicing. You're still paying attention. You're still practicing rise and fall.
And this is why we encourage people to come to a retreat a few days early, because the hecticness of our daily lives, and then also the stress on the organism from travel, generally speaking, people sleep the first 2 days. So it's good to just figure that into the equation.
In that sense, you people at home have an advantage, because you haven't traveled 5,000 miles to get here. So you should all be cooled out already. Nothing to do in Italy because you're in lockdown. Nothing to do in South Africa because you're in lockdown. Nothing to do in Vancouver because you're in lockdown. Nothing to do in Germany or Paris because you're in lockdown. Even nothing to do in Toronto and Calgary. I think that's everybody. Oh, and Leslie, of course, nothing ever happens in Montana. So, it's kind of fun, isn't it? Isn't it fun to have Montana, South Africa, Toronto, Vancouver, Hamburg, Paris, Calgary, an empty chair, and Florence.
Yes.
All on this program. Oh, and Wilaki
fun.
in Japan, where he's probably in bed. So super cool. Nice to see you all again today. Have
He's
a good day
He's in
meditating.
a really different time zone, isn't he?
If you're going to bed, have a nice nap.
I think
lying
there's
on
a
your right side.
question.
Oh, what?
Oh, Marty.
Are you
Marty.
asking a question, Marty?
Yes, thank you for this class, by the way.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You mentioned early on conflicted emotions and something other,
Primitive views.
primitive views. Okay,
Would you like to ask something about that?
no, it was
Okay,
just primitive views.
Primitive views means men are better than women. Primitive views are women are better than men. Primitive views are Americans are stupid, Canadians are nice. Primitive views. I mean, just kind of these really, Jesus is a God from outer space, primitive views, just, well, we are from outer space, so maybe it's not a primitive view, but anyway, never mind. Yes, Duncan.
With a question from online.
Okay.
It's more logistical. Deirdre just wants to confirm there's an online sit at 11 here that will be available for people to join. Is that right?
Streamed, yeah.
It will be
Not
streamed.
recorded, but
Yep.
streamed.
Not recorded, but people can join live.
Right.
And at
So-
3 p.m. Mountain as well.
And the cameras will be on, so she can kind of see people sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sit
it-
together.
you can sit together and you can see the people here meditating. If you, I don't. What time is it in South Africa? At 11 in the morning.
Looks like night.
It's definitely not early.
No, it's 6:39.
Anyway. Right. Say tutte. Okay. May these
wholesome and powerful activities eliminate negativity and ignorance while producing happiness and illumination for the uplifting of the world.
And
Yay!
please try to maintain a straight spine. Please try to keep your spine straight most of the time. Very good.
Straight but not rigid.
Straight but not rigid.
Straight but relaxed.
So Duncan, I need all these books back.
It's 6:30 in South Africa.
6:30 in the morning?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's not too bad. Oh, in the evening? Oh, that's not too bad. Ciao.
Have a nice morning.
Have a good morning.
You too.
Oh, Davin, can we see you for a sec? Yes.